Good evening. We will get started tonight with the New Ulm League of Women Voters Candidate Forum featuring candidates for Minnesota Senate District 16 first, and then later on at about 6 o'clock, we'll have the candidates for the New Ulm Mayor. This forum is designed to inform voters for the primary election, which is coming up on August 9th. The primary election is designed to determine which candidates will stand for election in the November general election. 5 candidates filed for mayor of the city of New Ulm, and by law, we can have 2 on the ballot, so we hold a primary to narrow that down to the top 2 vote getters who will then be on the ballot for the general election. 2 Republican candidates and 1 Democratic candidate filed for Senate 16. The winner of the primary for the Republicans will be on the ballot for the Republican Party. My name is Linda Heine. I'm a member of the New Ulm League of Women Voters and your moderator here tonight. I will be moderating the Senate panel. We will welcome Harriet Mason, who is with the St. Peter League of Women Voters, and she will moderate our mayor's panel tonight. League of Women Voters is a local, state, and national nonpartisan volunteer group. We encourage informed and active participation of citizens in government, and we influence public policy through education and advocacy. Our event tonight is designed to create an opportunity for you to educate voters about the relevant views of the candidates. Tonight, we will have questions presented from audience members who are here at New Ulm City Hall, as well as audience members who are listening on KNUJ, watching on New Ulm Community Access Television. Our purpose is to facilitate an opportunity to hear from the candidates on issues that are important to the public. The Senate 16 forum, for this forum, we invited only the Republican candidates, which is a little bit confusing. As I said, we are a nonpartisan organization. However, the only contested race in the primary is between the 2 Republican candidates, and that seemed to be the issue that we felt the public would need education on. So we did not invite the Democratic candidate because she does not have a challenger for the primary. We have several questions that we have questions that can be submitted by telephone tonight during the live event and by email. The email address is lwvnewulm@lwvmn.org. We have 2 phone numbers, 507-276-6140 and 507-276-4711. If you're watching on television, that information is on your screen. Those who are in the audience will be asked to fill out their questions on question cards. We have ushers available to pass those out. We receive all of our questions in writing. Those questions are then passed on to members of the league who review the questions. We try to consolidate them with the goal of making sure that the information sought from each question represents what the questioner seem to be asking for. We do try to avoid duplication. We won't ask questions that are of a personal nature and not relevant to the office, or questions that are designed only to make a statement rather than solicit information. Often we run out of time before we run out of questions. If that happens and you've submitted a question, please contact the candidate after the forum to have your question answered. So we will begin with Senate District 16 forum. And as I said, we invited the 2 Republicans who have filed for this office. The second, candidate Gary Dames is present and was available to attend. The second candidate's name is Larvita McFarquhar, and she was unable to attend this evening. It is the League of Women Voters policy to go ahead with the forum even if one candidate is not present, and that is why we're proceeding. This is not the first time that I think Mr. Dames has participated all by himself. It might just make for a quicker forum. So we will ask, the process is to have the candidates introduce themselves with short opening remarks. They'll have 90 seconds for that. After the opening remarks, we will present questions. We have 2 questions that we always provide in advance, not the same questions, but we always provide advanced questions to our candidates to kind of get things started. So they've had a couple of questions to prepare. We'll start with those 2, and then we'll proceed with the questions from the audience. So with that, we can go ahead, and Mr. Dames, you can go ahead with your opening statement.
Well, thank you, Linda, for moderating this event. We certainly appreciate it, and I'd like to thank the New Ulm Group of League of Women Voters for hosting. I'm Senator Gary Dames, and currently I represent Senate District 16. A little correction, Linda. This upcoming election will be for Senate District 15. So our name will change. My district stayed pretty close to the same, but it will be a new numbered district. So appreciate the opportunity to be here. Currently, I reside in Redwood Falls, Minnesota. I've lived in that area for quite a bit of my life. Married to my wife, Barb, who is here in attendance tonight. We have 2 grown children and 2 granddaughters, and so it's fun to have the granddaughters come over, fill them full of sugar, and send them home. But it's a pleasure to be here. I graduated from high school from Redwood Falls, graduated from the University of Minnesota with a degree in business and economics, and have owned small business pretty much the majority of my life. First business I owned was in St. Louis Park, and then I've owned some businesses in Redwood Falls. The last couple were, I had an insurance agency in Redwood Falls for 20-some years, and then I also had an insurance agency in Fairfax. So the reason I ran for Senate is I wanted to make sure that my children and grandchildren have some of the opportunities that I've had. And I can remember my father telling me many a times to make sure if you're going to do something that will help the next generation have the opportunities that you've had. And so that's the biggest reason I ran for the Senate, was to make sure that grandchildren and children and the future generations have the opportunities that we've been so fortunate to have.
All right, thank you. The first question that we provided to you was, how would you reform the Senate rules to make the legislative process more open and transparent to the public?
Well, I think one thing that we can do is more outreach. I think we actually have a pretty open system in the Minnesota Senate. Minnesota both the House and the Senate pride themselves in the amount of participation we get from constituents and citizens. And one of the ways we do that is we have a lot of hearings. And those hearings are set up so that the general public can attend those hearings. They can attend those hearings to either participate or to come and listen and see what's going on. But all those hearings are always posted, and that way the general public can see when a hearing is coming up, what it's on. If they would like to come in and testify or listen, they certainly can. If they're going to testify, they need to sign up, so we get times allotted for that. So that's worked out fairly well. COVID did kind of shake things up a little bit, and so I think the lines of communication got closed some with COVID, even though every one of our hearings are broadcasted. Sometimes they're not broadcasted at the same time the hearing is actually taking place. But one thing that we did do during COVID is we used the Zoom process in order to have people participate. So we did a hybrid type system where you could either participate through Zoom or attend. So I think one of the things that we will look at expanding is we'll bring our committees back in to the actual Capitol, but we'll allow a lot of people that want to testify from Zoom to save them from having that long trip. Maybe they have to come from northern Minnesota or whatever. They could participate in that process.
Thank you. Which one issue do you think is most important to work on with legislators across the aisle?
Well, I think what we have to do is we have to kind of look at where we can find some disagreement on some of these issues and make sure that we get those issues, get them through the hearing process, get them through the committee process, and make sure that we can get those bills passed off of both floors, get into a conference committee, and get those bills passed out. In my committee this year, one of the things that I did is, instead of having an omnibus bill, I took all of my bills, and I chair the Commerce Committee, I took all of my bills and I ran them through on an individual basis. And I discovered several things. One is that you probably get more participation when you get that bill on the floor, and it's easier to get both sides of the aisle to come in and participate on that bill. But what it does do is it really slows the process down. So when you have 10 bills that you run standalone versus one omnibus bill, it really takes a lot longer. But I think the participation is better. I think people get more involved. And I think you get into more of the nuances of what's really in the bill.
Okay. Where'd I put, okay. What are some likely environmental, okay, let me just rephrase this a second. What are some likely environmental legislative, environmental bills or proposed legislation do you see coming in the future?
I think one thing is, I think the clean emissions, the California car standards, the governor did pass those by executive order. There was no involvement by the legislative body, the House or the Senate. I do think, and we've had hearings on that, I do think we'll see after the election, but I do think next year we will continue to try to get those in front of the committees and actually have hearings on those bills and actually get a vote on the House and the Senate on those bills, and hopefully we can get the governor to relook at some of this stuff. Right now, we're at the command of California emission standards. Not only did the governor adopt their standards, but he's given them the authority. So when they change a standard, we will automatically follow that standard down the road. And I think that that's a pretty dangerous way to go. I'm not saying we don't have to be environmentally friendly, but I really don't like passing off our authority to another state and having them tell us what we're going to be doing. And currently, I think there's 3 states now, New York, California, and now Minnesota, that have pretty strict regulations. Now, there's certainly nothing wrong with a clean environment and clean cars, but we have to also take a look at the way this is being accomplished is with a lot of electrical vehicles, and that's fine. But right now, we don't have the infrastructure to turn it around as fast as what California is going to do, which would force Minnesota to do the same. So I do think that's something that will be up for some further debate.
So here's a similar question. How would you balance energy policy with environmental concerns?
Well, I think one thing that we can do is, there is a lot of clean coal energy production now, and it's actually very clean production, but that seems to be a real stigma to get that to be usable in Minnesota. One thing we can do is take a look at our nuclear. And I know people get a little nervous when we start talking about nuclear, but nuclear is a very reasonable way to produce energy and produce energy that's long-term and that is sustainable. But not only that, it's there when you need it. We certainly we've done great in Minnesota with the wind generation. We've done great with the solar. I think we need to use more of our water resources and get more credit for that environmentally for using that type of a resource. But the problem we have there is they're not reliable. When the wind blows, you have great energy coming off of those. When the sun shines, you have great energy coming off of those. But when they're down, you still need to supply that base load. And that's where we're having a little bit of an issue to get that put together. One of the things is being worked on, and I said on the LCCMR committee, and we are putting a lot of money into this, and other research people are putting money into coming up with these batteries that you could put that energy in and store it. And if we can get a storage system, that's going to change how we look at our energy considerably at a pretty fast pace.
Can you tell us what LCCMR?
Yes, it's a Legislative Citizens Commission on Natural Resources, and we get about $60 million a year, and the committee determines where that'll go, and it's for environmentally type projects. It can be projects, research, boots on the ground type things, and that money comes from part of the pull tab dollars.
So speaking of money, how do you think the state's surplus should be used?
Well, I think we thought we had an agreement, and the state surplus we would have put a chunk of it into tax reduction. We would have put some money into various spending pots, which would have included environment, agriculture, education, it included the whole gamut. And then we would have put another equally sized piece of that would have went into future savings. So that would have been just put in the bottom line for next year's budget bill. This is not a budget year, so typically we do not spend money in a non-budget year. Our budget was last year, and we did a budget that the House, the Senate, and the governor agreed to. So this year, with a $13.7 billion surplus, a lot of people felt that that money had to be spent. I don't think just because we have access to excess money, I don't think we need to just up and spend that. If we were going to spend it, it needed to be on it needed to be standalone projects that were one-time funding. And so at the end of the day, that didn't work out. So about $10 billion of that is on the bottom line.
Okay. So we have a question about recruitment of police officers, which might be something, that's kind of a local issue sometimes. But what role do you think the legislature might have in recruiting police officers, or are there policies that you could affect that would assist in recruiting police officers at a time when they seem to get very little support from the media?
Well, some of the things that we did put together a public safety bill, and we had two pieces to it. And what those pieces included was some dollars for outreach. So we could get some outreach out into the communities, trying to get the job of being a police officer looked at as a professional position, and not, right now, it's not a lot of people want to go into that business. And so we had some money for outreach. We also had some money for training for police officers. We were going to we had some money set up so that the folks that wanted to come in for police training, we would help with their tuition and some things like that for some of their education. We would have also put dollars into the current police officers groups for additional training. And also there would have been a bonus for young folks coming in and signing up and completing their training and becoming an officer. And then there would have been some bonus money to keep some of the older people that, in that business, some of these folks retire in their 50s because of the business and the stress and stuff and the things that go on. And so we were looking at doing a bonus to keep some of these people longer on into the forces longer. A pretty comprehensive program. And we had agreement with the House on it. The program would have passed had the full bill passed. It would have been part of that. So that's one that I think we'll come back and work on next year, and I think that we'll be able to get something done there.
Okay. What would you do to ensure that all victims of domestic violence receive the protection and the services that they need?
Well, I think that we've done a lot in the past. I've been in the Senate now 12 years, and we've did a lot with protecting their privacy and things like that. I do think that we have to have more shelters and shelters available and accessible. And so that's one of the things that we were looking at. And I think that we have to, I think there's a lot of other things that go with that. Certainly, we need to make sure that we have some opportunities for people that have some mental issues, that we have some way to get them to some place that can help them. And it has to be done in the critical part of the issues, get them into these systems so that they can get some help. But it's something that needs a lot of work, it needs a lot of attention, and we're going to have to put some money in it. And I think it starts with making sure that we have safe shelters to where these folks can go to, and in many cases with their children, and feel that they're protected and feel that, it's a base for them to start on.
What is your view on state aid to local government, pros and cons?
Well, I think that state aid to local government, LGA, and then the sister to that is CPA, County Program Aid. I think both of those are very, very important for rural Minnesota. And what we hear, a lot of the criticism that I hear is they say, well, what's happening is these communities are taking that money and they're building these fancy parks and they're building these fancy water slides, this, and this, and the next thing. And that really isn't happening. That money is being used to turn the street lights on, and keep the sewer and water systems going, keep the roads up. And so we may have some when we get into the Twin Cities. We've changed the formula some. Back in 2012, we did a comprehensive change on the LGA formula. And then a couple of years ago, we did some rebalance on the county program aid formula. But 10 years ago, when we made that change, we made it accessible for more communities in the Twin Cities. And so there are cases, I think, to where there's money being used that I think could be invested much better in their communities, but it's being used for parks and some things like that. But that's probably where the criticism is, but I've been a very strong supporter of LGA and CPA and will continue to be. So that's the basis for a lot of our cities being able to operate.
Okay. What do you think is the most pressing issue in education policy today?
Well, there are several. One that really comes to the top is literacy. And when we have 40% of our students not being able to read at grade level, we've got some pretty serious work to be done. And, you know, we look at how we're going to handle this, and we've kind of done the same thing for many years, but we do the same thing and expect a different outcome. And you're not going to get a different outcome if you don't start doing something different. And so somehow we need to look at some reform. But right now, I would say literacy is a real issue. And I think what really prompted that to show up more is when we had the schools closed for COVID. And what we're seeing is the kids that were struggling are really struggling. The kids were doing pretty well, hung in there in many cases, did pretty well. But having the kids out of the classroom was really very tough on teachers and very tough on the students. So, but that would be my number one program would be literacy, and we did have a pretty good program for that this year in our education bill.
Okay. Well, we are not, we're out of questions already. So I'm going to have you go ahead and make your closing remarks.
Okay. Well, again, thank you, Linda, for moderating this, and thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this. We really do appreciate it. And I'd like to thank the newspapers for being here, and certainly KNUJ for broadcasting this, and the local cable company for broadcasting it. And just want to remind people that this is an opportunity for people to decide who they want to be their representatives, both at the local and the state level. And these forums like this are a good way to find out what people are thinking and how they're operating and what their plans are. And so with that said, I'm Senator Gary Dames, and I do appreciate the opportunity to represent you. I've represented Brown County and New Ulm now for this finished my 12th year. And fortunately, if I'm fortunate enough to get reelected, we'll change district numbers from District 16 to 15. But we'll still have these communities and a few more over toward Mankato and a few less over toward Ivanhoe. But with that said, thank you folks very much. And any questions, certainly feel free to get a hold of me. And I'd appreciate the opportunity to represent you again. The reason we're here tonight is because we have a primary. And so I would ask for your support on August 9th. Please go to the primary. There's a lot of other folks that will be on the ballot. So please go and vote.
All right, so I just got handed some more questions.
Sure, that's fine.
Do you mind answering some on order? I mean,
no, that's no problem. No.
We have time before the next one. So,
yes.
Is Social Security income likely to go away?
Social Security income, I do not. Yeah, okay. So I do not believe Social Security income is likely to go away. I do believe that next session the tax on Social Security will be eliminated in the state of Minnesota. When we go out and we talk to people and do the research, 72% of the people in Minnesota, when it comes to reduction in taxes, that is the highest one that people want to see changed. 72% of the people in Minnesota want to see the income tax, the tax on Social Security, they want to see that or taken away. We did start some time ago in diminishing it so you could earn more and it wouldn't kick in right away. But this would now take the income tax off of Social Security.
Okay, so have you had any discussion in the legislature about lowering sales taxes?
You know, we have not. We have not had any discussion about lowering sales tax. We have many, many bills that come through that want to raise the sales tax. And so in many cases, being able to hold it flat or hold it where it is has been kind of what our goal and our objective has been. So I would say it's probably going to stay where it's at.
Do you anticipate a new penalty for fleeing a peace officer, the crime of?
We had a bill that would do that, and we were unsuccessful at getting that bill passed. We've got some work to do on that, but I think that is certainly, it's something that I support.
How about voter ID legislation? Do you believe that's likely to be passed in Minnesota?
In the current political setup we have, no. We'll see what the election brings this fall. I do find it interesting that we get so much pushback on having voter ID, and in some cases there was some legitimacy to why they were pushing back on that, and we were able to offer different things to take care of to resolve those issues. But what I did find, and I don't like to be political, but what I did find very interesting is at the Democrat State Convention, you had to have voter ID. Now, that kind of surprises me when their own party, I mean, when they're requiring voter ID, but yet they absolutely refuse to have it happen. But we'll leave it at that.
Okay, and now I think we really are done. And if you get up really fast,
But there's
you're
more
kidding
coming.
me. I'm sorry. This is so embarrassing.
No, that's fine.
Are you all right? Okay.
No, that's fine. I don't have a problem with, if people got questions, I would just as soon have them ask them and answer them.
Okay. Just give me a second to. All right, so the Supreme Court ruling that private schools should also receive public funding affect the amount presently supporting the public schools? And I think that means affect the current funding in place for public schools.
I don't know who put the question in. Are they indicating that the Supreme Court has ruled that?
That's the way the question is written. Is it that the Supreme Court has determined that private schools would receive some portion of public funding? And if so, would that result in a need to change the public funding structure?
Well, I know that there are certain areas that they have received some public funding, but I'm not sure how extensive this new change, this ruling, is this just a recent ruling? Okay, so I'm not sure how that will change things. The concern is gonna come in is if the private schools start receiving funds, they're going to probably end up having to follow the mandates like the public schools do. And so I'm not so sure how that's going to balance out. I think there would be a lot of thought being put in, depending on what the additional dollars are. Now, I know there's been some dollars for transportation and things like that, and that has not been an issue. My concern would be if we start giving public dollars to private schools, that then the mandates and all the things that go with that are going to follow that. And so I question how quick the private schools are going to be looking at taking that money, but that's just my thoughts. I don't know what'll happen there.
Okay. Okay. I think we're done. So thank you. Thank you for going out of order. I'm sorry. To follow up on your comment about the primary, yes, there is a primary election on August 9th. Early absentee voting is open right now, so people can go ahead and register and vote by mail. That opened on June 24th. If you need information on how to vote, go to the Minnesota Secretary of State or another website, Vote 411, which will link you to the Secretary of State. Vote 411 is a National League of Women Voters website, and all of our candidates have been asked to put information in at 411, so it's a one-stop shop for information on how to get yourself in position to vote and to learn about your candidates. So thank you again for coming, Senator Dames. We will now take a break. We're going to wait until 6 o'clock.
Thank you.